All right, Kanshi has made it to the stage. Man,
Thank you
we've
very
worked a
much
little
for
bit
having me.
over the past week to pull this together. I think I screwed up the last scheduling of the whole
I
thing.
think, and I think it was me, but
No, I'm pretty sure it was me. I was sitting there waiting to record, and I'm like, "Where is this guy?" Which is this happens occasionally, and then I look, I'm like, "Wait a minute, I've got him on the schedule for like an hour ago. I just had it in my mind that it was at this particular time, and it wasn't anywhere close,
no
so it
worries.
was
I
clearly
had a
my fault."
major breakdown slash emergency on my end at the same time.
Well,
So
good. So I always look at it that way. I'm like, hey, it just wasn't meant to be. So, but a lot of times I'm having to track people down in clubhouse rooms. I'll have a setup time to do a an interview, and I'm like, where is this person? And I go and they're in the clubhouse just talking it up. So it's no
it's
problem. I'm used to it.
I think it's the challenge that we all face, right? Where people say that we live in an attention-driven economy, right? And there are so
Right.
many, especially if we deep dive into this social context, we can see so many of those attention-driving activities, and that are
Yeah.
really great, right? And yeah, kind of
Yeah.
natural, I would say.
All right, so you're probably one of the hardest people to pin down as far as like how do you describe Kanchi? Like because I'll read you what I put on the screen here because I usually I have some sort of little headline I can say that kind of sums things up. And I wrote, "This dude is all about code, nodes, and improving how we build on DeSo. He's super smart, so try to keep up." Now I've never met you, I've never spoken to you, but I've gone through your file, so to speak, and your different projects, and they're just so far over my head. I'm like, what the hell is this stuff about? And so before we get into those, because I still find tech and science all super cool, and I love to learn. But I see some of your projects. I'm like, these are words I've never heard of, and he's in a whole nother level. But clearly, you've got a love for you've got a passion for trying to see what we can do with DeSo, and so I'll let you sort of just take it from the beginning. Like, what's your background and what brought you here? And you don't have to make that very comprehensive, but just give us a taste.
I think, I mean, long story short, I'm a tech guy, right? And I've been making software. I've been a developer my whole life, basically. So it's by now, since I was an early teenager, I've been building software. And at some point, I started, making conscious decisions about what is this thing that I want to build or which direction I want to go with it. And at some point, I went into the social networks direction. We built a quite successful social network in Spain, and then I was tumbling around the world of new products and innovation, and that's how I also ended up doing things with DeSo. Like, I think it's a very interesting framework that we can leverage to move the social layer of humanity in general to the next level, right?
Now,
By decentralizing it.
yeah, and so that struck me when I read in on your website that you have been fully involved in creating a social network that's been
Yes, sir.
fully utilized, and so there's a lot of opportunities out there now, directions you could go with social. And what about this sort of got your attention?
I'm super excited. I get goosebumps now when we're talking about it. Like, so for me, when that was 15 years ago, when we've been building the first wave of social networks, right? When Facebook was being born, when Twitter was being born, or when 20, which is the social network that I helped build, was being launched. There was not really that much of a creator economy, right? Those were just the first steps, the foundations for the creator economy that happened afterwards. I happen to also be a lucky guy to somewhat participate in it. Of course, not as a creator, but as a person who creates tools for those people. We launched several startups in this space. Some were globally recognized in startup competitions, or gained nice exposure. Some of them were Facebook marketing partners, and don't throw the
Yeah.
don't throw the stones, please. but on overall, I think I I like to think of myself as this lucky dude that managed to sit in the front row throughout this whole social networking type of revolution that is happening, right? Of course, there are many, many of people of this sort, but you know, on DeSo, it's a common framework for me, right? So I know what to expect. I know where to look for things, or what should be done, what can be done, or what is a dead end, and where we shouldn't, where we shouldn't stray away from the mission or from the vision that brought us all into the same context.
What about, I mean, you have compatriots that are in your field.
Mhm.
Do you think they see it this the way you do? You know, people that have come along in social media development like you have, and do you think they get it like you do?
They do understand it, but many people are tired with it. So what I would say is that among my peers, I see rather being tired with the topic of advertising, social media, and general that kind of stuff, rather
But I'm
than
talking about in relation to this new thing called DeSo. Like, you've
so
all come up through the ranks building this stuff.
everybody.
You found
Mhm.
something that excited you. Has someone else who's had a similar path come along and said, "I just don't get it. It's not for me," or "I'm going to
No,
stay with this
they
more
don't say
traditional
that. No,
social."
yeah, they don't. They don't say that. It's just that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that they don't have the same passion for social
Right.
networking, I guess, as I do, right?
I see.
And I'm coming also here from the perspective. I mean, I bumped into it not just because I like social, but because I was looking for a social framework that would be somewhat related to cryptocurrencies that I could use in Astronation, the virtual world that I'm still building or I'm launching right now.
Mhm.
Right. So I was searching for a tool, and I found that tool, and I saw that okay, this tool has a lot of potential in it. So let's see. Since again, I also like to discover and build startups, build the new technology. This is a nice environment. Let's see how I can help here. Perhaps launching, and perhaps participating in materializing this vision somehow.
Yeah, and so to understand this, I'm going to show this Astronation, which is, you've
Yeah.
professed has
Mhm.
been that project that's consumed you probably for quite some time. And it looks to me like, from reading on your website, this is not a new website. It looks like you've been doing this
Yeah,
project
we've
for a very long time and have been, this is looks like a project that's been growing with VR. It's not just VR became popular and now you've decided to jump in and create something. You've been growing with the
exactly.
industry.
Exactly. I actually
And I
switched
want you
it
to
into
describe,
VR. Yeah.
yeah, so
Mhm.
so describe to me, so that we understand what you're really trying to do with Astronation, which is, as you call it, the next gen virtual world, but
So,
how DeSo can relate. What could DeSo be integrated in this?
so this I think plays a very important part in it. And initially, I wanted to use Stellar, but again, I diverged into DeSo, as this is a more natural interface for social interactions rather than building on top of a abstract blockchain like Stellar. And what I'm trying to achieve is to essentially build a next generation virtual world, the virtual world that I find so many people share this vision of a holistic interaction environment where we all can just build a new world with the new rules, actually materializing all of those virtual assets that we're creating right now. So I see this as a some sort of an evolution of the virtualization of our lives, right? And so one of the things that I think Astronation brings to DeSo is the modern vision of what the social network should look like. I don't think we should put that much effort into competing on the websites with this whole ecosystem that is already deployed in the web, right? Even we can say that we're going to build Web 3.0, that's fine, but really the new wave of interface, the new wave of interactions, because of how rich they can be in VR, is in that world, right? So we can leave it to Facebook to create that metaverse or Horizon, or however they want to call it, or we can build it ourselves as the community. And this is my, let's say, lifelong lifelong monument. And you can see now the dates.
Yeah.
In 2014, I've had the first web game prototype, actually, because and then a friend of mine, when I showed it to him, he told me, like, Andre, do you know how games look like now? And I figured this is exactly why, I shouldn't be paying that much attention to web, because at that time everybody was on mobile. And so I figured, okay, so this has to be a 3D, like this full experience, because when I actually start materializing it downstream or down the road, it's going to be a completely different world that we're going to be living in. And that was the case where in 2017 I switched to VR based experiences, and released the first demo that was up for 2 years. That we've been updating the engine of it, producing the assets, doing a lot of technical work with it, to be able to put a modest pre-alpha release, hopefully by the end of the next year, and maybe in the upcoming week or weeks. I don't want to rush too
Hmm.
soon, because again, it's just I see this as an evolution. And again, very happy to be able to get to the point in which we can grow it as a community, rather than somebody doing it behind closed doors, because it's just not rich enough for the experience of the users.
Hmm.
But
And this becomes a 3D world, almost like a galaxy where
yeah,
you can travel from one part of the galaxy to the other in a gameplay situation. So it
and what
is a
is
game,
important,
so to
that
speak.
it kind of is, but it's not. Not normally, when you think about games, you would think about experiences that are pre-programmed, right? So,
Hmm.
in a sense that somebody presses this button or does this action, these are the consequences. This is the animation we're going to show, and this is how it's going to work. I call it the world because it's not as if I'm going to be pre-programming every single thing that can happen there. We have a dynamic system of materials, meaning that every single thing that is there, right, has its own properties that are governed by physical processes, rather than just the programming that was made by the developers, which also means that people can discover new materials. I don't even know what will be the properties of the future materials that people will be able to discover or create within the world. And the same applies to the shapes or surfaces of different things, right? And what is actually going to be done there, right? So I'm thinking about this more as a platform where people can shape the reality around them to their liking, basically.
So is it I'm simplifying this. Is it next generation Minecraft?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
So, like for instance, physics. If I want to go from one planetary object to another, will the physics between those like as I'm transiting, will
it's
the
going to be
physics be
continuous.
different in transit?
No,
Because
it's going to be continuous. That's also one of the things that I wanted to emphasize, right? So because most of the experiences right now are scene based, right? And
Mhm.
this comes from actually technical limitations, the way that we simulate physics. And here, because of my, let's say, technical or architectural background, I came up with a little bit different model how to simulate physics. Made a 1 year long project with two other PhDs from the Quantum Physics University, and we created a comprehensive model of very simplified but still physics-like interactions that I have then later implemented during the past year and a half, and they govern essentially the what is happening within the world, right? And of course, these are like the models that we're also creating over the past years, and these are just the starting ones, right? Of course,
Mhm.
we need to start somewhere, but I really would love to get people involved in terms of not only painting the ships with spray paints, but also creating the models of
Mhm.
whatever they think about, right?
So do these things become game assets?
Yep.
Like a
Hmm.
person,
Hmm.
if you've got initial items, a person could, win these, trade these, um,
Yes.
sell them for DeSo,
Yes.
buy them
Yes.
with DeSo. Okay. So you're
Yes.
having to, so to what degree have you been able to sort of collaborate with the core dev team at this stage to say, hey, here's what I've got in mind, and what, how do we bridge this gap?
I would love to. I would love to talk. I think the core team has a very specific vision that they're materializing right now. I don't think changing it that much in the sense that by saying okay, let's now put a lot of effort into VR environment and that kind of stuff. I don't think that's in any way on their radar. Having that said, of course, I have submitted on the first day the
Right.
Octane submission. Of course, I haven't heard back though, but I mean, there's time for everything. I think I hope to that once I launch the client, in a sense that people will actually be able to again, because the demo went down because I needed the server for Love for Source for DeSo.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
but once I get it back to the people's headset, that's when I want to start reaching out more proactively to people, right? Because right now, really, I think it's not that captivating in terms of imagination. And I've seen this before with the demo. There's difference when I talk to people and they can actually see what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and when it's just like check out the YouTube video that we recorded with demo. It's a different conversation.
Right. All right. So let's, because we could probably talk about this for 2 more hours, because I get geeky on this stuff and want to ask a million questions. But you've been very involved in the community, and one of those ways, the first place that I think I became aware of you was through Love for Source, which coincided with really this, point in time when people were starting to finally develop and release nodes. So you're obviously really deep into that community of node developers. So tell me about Love for Source, what you guys are doing with that.
Love for Source is a community initiative. I'm kind of the main pusher here, but I would I wouldn't be myself if I wouldn't mention the team, which
Right.
is quite sizable. I would say at this stage we got Slava, Madame Fetish, we got Matreshka, Sean Slater, Zach Mead, Pan Pavel, and probably I hope I'm not missing anybody.
CICs,
Tyne, of course, the
yeah, Tyne.
first there. But I mean, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring together the community of builders, and to give them the formula and also give them an environment to to strive, essentially, right? So on one side, Love for Source as a node itself, its purpose is to, on one side, be a collection of different templates that node operators can use for to set up let's say the skeleton of their community and start working forward with it. DeSo Labs, on the other hand, is the initiative that we run to support the node operators from the community. But Love for Source in general, we also have a Discord server that we would like to everybody, of course, feel invited to. Again, the discussion is focused on the DeSo technology. Still, this is an environment for developers, basically. That's how I see this.
Hmm.
We've helped. I don't. Of course, there are many nodes available in public, but I like to think that or I've set up most of them, at least the ones that are considered like those social network type of nodes, where people are trying to build the communities around it rather than create a tool that would solve a specific purpose. I think so. I'm trying to work on, or I'm trying to push in the direction of decentralization. Here, I think that we need to have several healthy, I call them competency centers, right? So the core team is like one competency center that is working with the protocol, but we need to have few of those to be able to, to balance out the different motivations and to truly be able to say that we are decentralized. And this is why I basically focused on pushing in that direction.
Yeah.
And then
Now, I mean, I'm just looking at
Mhm.
the post about, all the different nodes that are already in place. And it's like 10 or 11, or I mean, I'm just guessing.
You
But that's
can at
impressive, it
least,
seems.
indeed, I'm very happy that the community is growing so fast. You can always check that on the DeSo Ninjas page. There's a node monitor there. Uh,
Right. Yeah, and I forgot I forgot that you also did DeSo Ninja, which is a bot, right?
which is, yeah, it's slowly growing. It's my bot that I use to help me with things, but I think it's a different way of working with the DeSo blockchain, where normally, if you look at the technology that we have right now, it's like one application that holds the whole thing, right? So it
Mhm.
scales vertically. And what I did with DeSo Ninja is I put the DeSo blockchain on in a distributed model, right? So I have it spread among multiple servers, so I can scale it horizontally, and perhaps I can do some stuff faster or differently. And this is my take essentially on how I would structure or architect this type of a system. Right now, it's in the form of a bot, but I want this bot to also start providing services to node operators, because I see how this part of the community, they do have needs that are different from regular users, and it's hard to expect for the core team to be able to cater to all of those needs at once. And yes, I figured I'm gonna try to help these guys in particular.
And so DeSo Ninja sort of aggregates data for them to use and learn from.
I mean, it's Deso Ninja. To be honest, right now it's not that useful, I would say, to people. The idea is that, so for example, right now it has the feeds. It has feeds in multiple different languages. It had it for a while. I don't think multiple node operators, or I mean, I didn't feel many of them being in particular interested with these feeds. The social team made their own feed filter, kind of. So
Mhm.
I think I need to add more intelligence into it. But basically, what I'm trying to do is not, rather than collect and generate statistics, rather focus on more intelligent processing of the or data analytics on
Right.
top of the on top of the blockchain.
Right. So I heard a really great Clubhouse sort of discussion today, and it was kind of a venting session. Some people were there just pretty disappointed right now, but it was a helpful, I think, discussion that I didn't take part in. I was actually busy doing other things, but listening in, and a couple of things came to mind to me. It had a lot to do with the algorithm, the current,
Mhm.
and I guess I don't know if it's the core dev central algorithm, or is it? I think it's more related to uh, Diamond app, which I think a lot of people view as just simply being part of the core dev team. They're not disassociating that node, I think, mentally or psychologically. But there, some people are not happy because it's not perfect, which I think is unreasonable. And then others are like, "Well, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine." But what it pointed out to me was that the algorithm is probably the most important part of this whole thing. That if they can't get that right, the whole project may flounder. But but the difference here is this isn't Facebook or TikTok or any other centralized social media. It's a decentralized. So it's incumbent upon people like you uh, and me, but namely you, because you know what you're doing, to build those algorithms. And so I see a future where I'm impressed by 10 or 12 nodes, but I see a future where there's tens of thousands of nodes in the next couple of years or less. Because I've personally felt like DeSo is a potential internet, and that our handles like Kanshi and the DeSo show are websites, the equivalent of that. And so when I set up a WordPress website, I've got opportunities to put plugins and other things, APIs, all these sort of customizations. And I think it was Raj and I who briefly were speaking one day in a room months ago about having a node, a sort of WordPress type deal where you set up a node and you've got little check boxes. And I see like like a like let's say Kanshi developed a here's your node in a box. You want to set up a node, here's the software to do it, and you're going to have check boxes for interests and ages and languages and sliders instead of check boxes. Say I want to provide a feed that has, a little bit more politics to the left and a little more sports related to football, and a person can literally create their own experience on a node, where I go to a node and I say, I know what I want to see, and I want to see a little less of this, a little more of that. And an AI guides that to say, you seem to really enjoy this. Would you like to see more of this or less of that? And you collaborate with an AI to help procure your own experience.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. You touched on two very important topics. The first one is the algorithm, right? And the second one is how can we get the information from the blockchain integrated into the world, right?
Yeah.
Regarding the algorithm, I think I'm not sure. Like when you're speaking, I'm not even sure if the fact that the hot feed algorithm, because I understand this is the algorithm we're talking about, that the hot feed algorithm was made. It's great that it was made. Don't get me wrong, but maybe it was a mistake, because now we have another one thing to rule them all, and one thing for everybody to complain against, right? Where before the global was kind of manually controlled, right? So there was at least a lot of flexibility in it, and it was not so rigid in that sense. And the common assumption was that every single node is going to have a different one, right? So that rigid, like that flexibility is going to be even higher. Now we have every single node implementing the same algorithm, right? So we kind of moved in the opposite direction that was expected. On the other hand, we have some parameters that we can use to tweak it, but then they seem to be universally insufficient, right? So I think this is why people feel that this is not necessarily the best solution that we could have had at this point in time. And I don't know if there's any that we could deliver in such a short period of time, because my take on this is that we can go two ways. One is the central feed that is, let's say, global hot, however we want to call it, or we could have the users receive their personal feeds. That would include not only the data from the people that they follow, but perhaps some data that is used or that is highlighted using some sort of discovery mechanism. So I think, here, perhaps, or at least the solution that I'm thinking about and the solution that I'm implementing in DeSo Ninja is that these feeds that are language feeds right now, essentially every single user will be able to source posts from different languages and then apply the filters that they want on top of that by their own choosing, right? So let's say I want to have a feed, or I want to have 10 feeds.
Right.
One of them is going to be people that I follow, and then that their coin is value above 50, right? The other feed is going to be interesting people related to that project, for example, or people talking about that hashtag, right? And I see those things materializing. I'm not sure if Thorsten didn't implement something simple in terms of like you can generate or you can capture the class of elements, right? So people would separate NFTs into a separate feed, for example.
Right.
So
that was something, by the way, that was very people were emphatically behind. Was I want to separate NFTs. I think, and I'll admit, I've gotten a little tired of BitClout DeSo lately, because I'm tired of looking at NFTs. I think most people are feeling that way. And someone in the room brought up some pretty compelling statistics that indicated that most users of DeSo are not interested in NFT.
Yeah, especially not at that type of communication of it, or that exposure.
Right.
Like we're not like there are not that many sellers to consume, or buyers. Sorry, there are not that many
Right.
buyers to consume
Right.
all of those
Right.
commercials
And even
that
if
we're
there were,
receiving.
that shouldn't consume the whole feed. It should be. I think we're all seeing a world. They let's partition that. Go there when you want to shop. But another NFT artist brought up, yeah, but we still need exposure. We still should have some opportunity to be on the global feed. If whatever that global feed is, I think that's a term for the past, probably.
And ultimately, I think we are here to figure it out, because nobody
Yeah.
knows really how to do it. So I think we are blessed to be able to have that opportunity, and this is also what kept me here. It's like
Yeah.
it's a perfect environment for, like, if you're interested in social, you want to do stuff. This is amazing playground, like,
Right.
in a
Right.
professional sense, of course, right?
So,
uh,
but now
but
let's talk
the,
about
the,
you
the
brought up a good
second point,
point. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Finish your point.
the second point that you mentioned is, how do we mix the data from DeSo into the world, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think here the big part of it is this decentralization, in the sense that in Facebook's best interest was to pull in all the traffic from all the websites, right? In the case of DeSo, this doesn't necessarily have to be like that. So we don't necessarily need to be imagining these one click deploys for DeSo node, because we might as well just imagine the modules that would include your feed from DeSo, right? Or
Hmm. Hmm.
ability to diamond somebody. Identity is a secondary layer, right? So whenever you log in somewhere else, you are coming in with your DeSo profile, with your DeSo wallet.
Hmm.
So we might as well just do some plugins to WordPress, do some
Yeah.
plugins to
Yeah.
Webflow. Right?
Right.
I think this would be even a better way, because instead of reinventing the same industry standard tools everybody knows, like, in that kind of stuff, we don't have enough power to just wipe the whole internet. Like, we need to integrate with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I think.
And I do believe that's part of the DeSo vision is to be some rails for these things, and that it starts putting its fingers into all the websites somehow, which that's where some superpower comes in. So, um,
Yeah.
uh, now
Give
you
the superpower to those websites, exactly, right?
that's
Because
right,
normally the
right.
website is kind of like, you cannot provide recognition. I mean, you can give a follow, but that's not the same thing, right? And here we are actually by those integrations, we are able to deliver this vision to the world,
Hmm.
right? that's
Right.
that's how I feel that vision is, essentially.
Hmm. Excellent. So now I give you credit for being, the high level technologist you are, and have been involved in a lot of things, for still being here. And one demonstration of that is that you've put your hat in the ring to be in this DeSo Voices, this highly controversial community
Indeed. and i
rep
was not and I
program.
was not eager, and I was not very eager, believe me.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
I've been on the fringe of that, quite honestly, and I kind of look at it from both directions. But you you know, I guess what I see is this: you got to start somewhere, and it's kind of like, I remember joining or when we started what we call a homeowners administration here in the United States, for our neighborhood. We were taking it over from our builder, and I was like, oh God, I don't want to be involved. But I wanted to be on the first board so I could at least be involved with setting it up. And then but I was miserable for that whole year. I was like, I am not enjoying this, because you walk
Yeah.
down the street and people are like, hey Bill, I want to bend your ear about this problem I'm having. And I was like, well, I'm just walking my kid to the bus stop. I don't really want to hear this right now. So when you throw your hat in the ring for something like this, you got to know you're going to start getting a lot of complaints from people, and you may not be in the mood for it. But so it does
Totally.
take a lot of commitment. So I commend anybody who's willing to do it, because I don't have the bandwidth or energy for it at this stage. So
And I
I give
don't
you
think.
credit for that.
Thank you very much. I totally share your sentiment. I would
Yeah.
say, I think we're, but still, I think we are in a little bit more unique situation, in the sense that, like, we are getting bombarded by the internet, so it's the scale
Yeah.
is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but also the fact that we don't really actually decide for anybody, right? So
Right.
this is also the reason why we switched from these community representatives kind of concept into just DeSo voices, like
Hmm.
selected, chosen DeSo voices, because we're not really making decisions on somebody's behalf, right?
Right.
Whereas in those traditional settings, that's the main, let's say that's the main thing, right? So that somebody makes decisions on your behalf, be it a
Hmm.
political representation or legal representation, or let's say social local governments, right? Mm, so here, I think there's also a different formula. What is interesting for this type of internet communities, right? It's kind of a similar organization. The purpose, the you know the wide vision, so to speak, is very similar, but the mechanics and how it works, because of how decentralized we are, how little impact and over each other or overlap of those of those stakes we have. I think it's a slightly different organization. This is also what fascinates me, and that's why I ultimately decided to go in, because I like to think about it like we've had everything evolves, and we've had enterprise architecture or enterprise software architecture in general,
Hmm.
like organization of companies, and how does that mix with software that we develop for it, and how do we automate those activities that are happening within the companies, how do I automate those processes. I think exactly the same thing is now happening on the level of communities. So what I'm thinking about right now in my head is about community architecture. And to be able for me to understand as a technologist community architecture, I have to put myself in the first line. There is really no other way to be able to explore
Sure.
all of the challenges, right, in terms of communication, in terms of decision making, in terms of the needs identification, that kind of stuff. So me personally, if somebody asks me why did I decide to follow through, this is my reason, right? That I'm really, again, like getting back to this, me having 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 a thing for social. This for me is a unique opportunity to be able to explore the
Yeah.
knowledge space of community architecture. Yeah.
So, just there's a hint of what you just said that makes me think I want to see more of that attitude from Nader, like the community architecture side of this. Like, is there a
I
degree to, I mean, and I'm speaking strictly from an arm's length perspective, but I don't know. My impression is I'm getting the feeling that the core dev team, their priorities are not about this community.
I think there.
Not out of not caring. It's just their priorities are they have several $100 million in play from big, powerful people who are like, here's how it's going to go, and you're going to focus here. So forget what these people that, yeah, sure, they're important new people to the platform, but ultimately they're inconsequential to the big picture of what we're doing. That's my impression. And I think some different sort of social involvement could change that impression.
I think that would be very scary if that would be the actual case. I think I agree with you that it could be perceived that way. The way that I see it is that it's more related to not being so much exposed to the social aspects of it. So maybe not being so receptive of the social network aspects of what we're doing, right? Of social networking type of
Hmm.
aspects.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of focus on in terms of the cryptocurrencies, the dynamics there, the let's say trading is a lot of focus, right?
Hmm.
Mm, and promoting, let's say, the business activities, which is super healthy. I am totally for it. I do think, or maybe I even see how people are saying more and more that, like, come on, I mean, but it's about us, not about one deal that somebody made, right?
Yeah.
And here, the like I've been saying this for a while, but I think we're kind of like on a crossroads. In one sense, we can go in the way of, let's say, decentralization, community enablement, and let's say doubling down on the vision, or at least what many people read in the vision,
Hmm.
and that it's a network of the community and that kind of stuff. On the other on the other end of that crossroads, we have the situation that is kind of more standard for the crypto community, where there is a core team that is managing the protocol and controlling the protocol, and is saying that is decentralized because there are many people who are using it, right?
Hmm.
And so I would be much more in favor of decentralization like Bitcoin, where there is a strong group, let's say, influencing it, but it's not the only group. And those things can, those again competency centers, they can
Yeah.
balance themselves out somehow, right?
Yeah.
Because we and I don't want to be empty-handed here. I can give a perfect example of BitCloud and Diamond App, where currently the technology that we have that is being created, let's say by the core team, is great, but is strictly aligned with the Diamond app, right?
Yeah.
And so if somebody wants to build their own community built on this protocol, it's not fully ready for that yet.
Yeah.
Right? And this is also, I think that comes from the fact, of course, that we're early and all of those things, but it also, kind of demonstrates how this externalization, this decentralization also is not yet that strong. And I'm saying not that strong because I think it exists, and it exists. I know it exists because of the all of the nodes that I've been building
Right. Right.
with all of those teams. Because it's not even about me. It's every single node has a team that takes care of it, right? I'm just a dude that is helping them out, right? Giving like a gentle push at the beginning and making a little bit of money
Yeah.
along with it, right? But beyond
So
that, those are their communities, their systems.
are we even close to being decentralized yet?
I think we are close. Yeah, I think we're
And the
close.
more nodes come on increases that decentralization. Or is it a mining
Exactly.
thing? Or I mean, to
I
clarify
like
for
to.
people, is it every time a person like you puts up a node that creates further decentralization, or is it something that the core dev team has to do on a protocol level and the network sort of validation side that creates more of that decentralization?
I, I think the decision is up to the core team, right? So right now we have something that is called trusted block producers, which essentially means that only a handful of nodes uh, are actually deciding upon which transactions go into the blocks or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the more nodes we have, the more interesting it is for the core team to change that first block, right? To
Right.
release that block, right? Because there is no such. I don't see this as a first release the block, then deploy the nodes. I think we're in a situation where we first deploy the nodes. Once we have a healthy network of nodes, then we release the block, right? Or maybe make it much wider while still
Yeah.
preserving some control, right? Because I do think that we need this type of control. Well, we, the core team, they, right? This type of, I mean, we as a community too, we need them to be in control right now because we're so early in the process that, like going head first all in might not be, we're not ready for this yet. We are
Yeah.
about to replace the whole consensus mechanism, like in the next few
Right.
months, like, why
Yeah.
bother?
Well,
Right?
sure. And so that's going to require a fork, a hard fork, correct? And
Well, hard fork would suggest that there is going to be a different continuity, but this we're gonna I expect that we're gonna preserve the continuity of the blockchain. It's just that the technology that is building it is gonna change, meaning specifically we're gonna change the algorithm that decides which transactions go, well, maybe not which transactions go into, yeah, which transactions go into the blocks, and how do we sign them
mm,
with what, right?
yeah,
So, but we'll see what is the scope of changes. I would also hope that the community, we get involved somehow in commenting on this, that it's going to be done
right,
in the open. Perhaps that's going to save us some changes later
yeah.
downstream, perhaps not,
Well,
who knows.
call it, whether it's a hard fork or whatever you want to call it, it's a serious protocol level
Yes,
base
yes.
layer change. And
Yeah.
to what degree do you think I feel like at that point is when there should be a change in at least the the unit size of DeSo, and perhaps the bonding curve, and there's several schools of thought on the bonding curve part. But at least to me, I don't know how you can want to have billions of users of something where there's only 10 million units that you can share. And so I believe you have to sort of subdivide those DeSo into, and Bitcoin's has gone through the same issue. To this day, I have friends that'll say, "Well, I just can't afford a Bitcoin." Well, I was like, "You don't have to afford a Bitcoin," but that's the consensus. We're 13 years into Bitcoin, and people still think, "Well, it's too expensive. It's 60 something $1,000. I can't afford Bitcoin." Well, DeSo only has 10 million units, even though it's subdivided into nanos, which is quadrillions and all of that. Either a terminology has to come about where we're not talking about buying and selling in DeSo. We have to call them nanos, and we just dispense with the word DeSo. I mean, that has to be a part of the equation, or you have to subdivide, the current DeSo into smaller DeSo, and the new DeSo is going to be 1/100th or 1/1000th of a current DeSo. And now instead of that one DeSo you own, you have 1,000 of them. And you know what I'm saying? It's like a stock split, but something has to happen, I think, so that people adopt it more easily.
I think another did hint on the split that is incoming. So I would expect that in the upcoming, in the next few months, we're going to get a split, right? So the one DeSo is going to become multiple DeSos.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would just put, and this is me doing crazy tech talk, but I've bumped into this problem in reality on several occasions. So I think this is something to consider here too. Most of the calculations on computers are 64-bit. So and 64-bit numbers have quite a finite number of digits that you can include in them. And when we're talking cryptocurrencies and those really big numbers, we will have to migrate into larger number representation that is not just 64-bit. And in that case, we would be able to subdivide much more, in some models even infinitely. But I think this would be the technical limitation that we should also consider. I don't think this is the main case right now, or this is the main issue. Just do a split, and this perception challenge that you mentioned, then this perception can be solved. But then long term, we just don't have enough numbers.
Sure. And so does that mean we need to be 128-bit architecture or more?
And that's probably going to come once the computers switch to 128 bits, right? The same way that we switched from 8 to 16 to 32, 64, right?
Right.
So it's going to happen, but probably in the upcoming years.
Yeah. And the average person could care less about what you just said.
Exactly. That's why the highlight, I'm going to get a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, man, I'm glad we did this, and I think we could have done another hour or two, because I know you've got an awful lot you've got your hands into. But what I'm counting on is two things. One is that I think, however long you're a representative of the community, you're going to bring a great perspective to that team that can be very helpful.
And the team is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a dynamic team that'll be changing at all times. But I think hopefully we'll always have at least someone with a brilliant tech mind like yours involved with that, and not just people who are involved with, I just want to build social media. I just want to be a socialite, so to speak. We've got to have that diversity. So I'm glad to see that, and hope you'll stick it out for a while. And I think you're going to be highly involved with the overall growth. This is me speculating. The overall growth of the platform, and I think you're one of these people, like several others I've run across, where I'm like, the core dev team should probably be really getting involved with this person if they so yeah, and I think that'll happen, but it's just going to take time. But I'm glad you came, and we got to know you a little bit. And for those of you listening, we're doing audio podcasts of this, but we're recording and streaming this to YouTube simultaneously. You've got this amazing filter on your look. And I saw this the first time I came across you. You were on another feed, and I was like, who in the heck is this guy? He's like a cartoon character. It's amazing. And so is this like just a filter you're putting in your camera, or what is this? You look just like you're
It's
a cartoon figure, avatar.
it's Snap Camera, so another social tool,
Hmm.
right? So it creates a virtual camera on my in my machine, and I just put the video from my regular camera through it, and it applies many different filters. This one I like because it's not very distracting. Many of them are quite funny, so check it out. It's
Yeah.
Snap Camera by Snapchat, basically.
It's called what? Stop camera?
Snap
Snap
Camera
camera. Okay, great.
by Snapchat.
I have to check that out. All
So
right, Kanshi, we'll be hearing more from you, I know.
thank you very much for
All
having
right.
me. It was
Yeah,
a
and
true
and by the
pleasure.
way,
Thank you for
you're in Poland, right?
yes, sir.
Wow.
Western
Okay.
Central. I'm in the middle between Warsaw and Berlin.
Wow. What a place to grow up. And I have to believe that you probably have a uniquely different viewpoint on social media, censorship, decentralization, all of these things than, you know, um,
I do learn
I,
a lot. I do learn a lot. Yeah.
yeah. How much does that really play into your sort of desire to see this decentralization?
Um, I don't feel
You
it that
know,
much. I mean,
well, I mean,
I've been.
you're much younger than me, but you grew up in the shadow of the post uh,
Oh yeah, I had the
USSR,
chance of.
USSR,
Yeah,
and
I still were the kid that was running around away from militia. So,
yeah, yeah.
so
So,
yeah,
yeah, so there's got to
I
be a
caught the fate
component
of.
to this. Yeah, to what degree does that uh, bring an urgency to this for you?
Uh,
So that,
I think I definitely have a little bit more sensitivity in terms of the social aspects. I'm not sure if that's related to the, like my childhood experience in communism, or the state of war, because that's where like essentially Poland was its state of war in
mhm,
the 80s,
right.
until the transformation happened. There was also a lot of like we call it crazy capitalism that happened in 90s right after the transformation. We had like huge
Mm,
inflation, a lot of and a lot of people. So we switched from a system that was very socially oriented in the sense that everybody's taken care of, uh, poorly, but everybody,
mhm,
right, and
mhm,
forcefully,
yeah,
uh, into a system where everybody's on their own. And I saw how many people who needed help were not receiving it. So like my
yeah,
90s was basically when I was working as a lifeguard, as a medical assistant, like helping the sick in a social station and that kind of stuff. So I have also like medical ethics, let's say. That's what
mm,
drives me a lot. And I think that gave me this social twist, like of just trying to look at people and what do they actually need rather than what I'm trying to do, right?
right, yeah. Well, I can tell it drives you passionately, and thanks for sharing what you're doing. And I hope you can come back soon. And I want to follow, especially your Astronation. I know that's going to be baseline for you. Like you'll constantly be pushing that, and I see some amazing possibilities there. I want to learn more and follow that. So,
It's amazing. It's like, and I'm really, again, I've had like goosebumps 3 times during our conversation. You're touching on really good topics,
right
man.
on, right on.
But yeah, totally. I'm thrilled. I cannot wait to get this into people's headsets, like, and into their heads.
Yeah, me too. All right, thanks, Kanshi.